So I have a kind of a vague idea of what I want to do in this video. And it was precipitated by a few things. The first thing was I'm in a book group and we're reading Celine's Journey to the End of the Night, which I read in my 20s. And I probably reread once after, and then am rereading now with this group, right? And I came across this passage. It said, "In the whole of your absurd past, you discover so much that's absurd, so much deceit and credulity that it might be a good idea to stop being young this minute, to wait for youth to break away from you and pass you by, to watch it going away, receding in the distance, to see all its vanity. Run your hand through the empty space it has left behind. Take a last look at it, and then start moving. Make sure your youth has really gone. And then calmly, all by yourself, cross to the other side of time to see what people and things really look like." So, when I was working at the record store, Penny Lane, I in another video I mentioned Dusty, and I think I will talk about Dusty at some other time, but there was also a guy there that his name was Mark, and Mark was like he was the coolest guy. And he you know what he looked like? He looked like, or who he looked like? He looked like John Spencer from the John Spencer Blues Explosion. And he was one of those people who just had this innate charisma that everybody thought was so uh it was just he was just like a great person to be around, and he was just the coolest person you'd ever met. And I was in my early 20s, and I had a copy of Bob Dylan's, um, I think, Bringing It All Back Home, which I liked, but I was kind of more, I think at that time or when I'd gotten it, I'd been more into the Velvet Underground and Lou Reed. Not Lou Reed solo stuff, but the Velvet Underground. And so what happened is I was at the record store and I started dabbling in some harder drugs because that's what the guys there were doing. And I was going through I started going through a kind of what was a pretty intense breakup for me at the time. And I started really listening to Bob Dylan and that period that everybody is so captivated by, which is really the Highway 61, or Bring It All Back Home, Highway 61, and Blonde on Blonde. That really captivated me. And I remember like late nights being up on drugs and miserable and listening to Visions of Johanna, which is really amazing. And I wanted to get, I just became kind of obsessed with Dylan. But I didn't know all his stuff really. And then I gradually started moving forward in the catalog, and the Basement Tape stuff was really good and captivating. At that time, it was only the 2 CD set, and that set is still good. The bootleg thing with all the unvarnished recordings is good, but the 2 CD set that lets the band have their songs on there and stuff, that's good too. And I read the Heinlein books about him at the time, and I was just really into it. And then I started trying to get further into the catalog, and I kind of like hit a wall because I would hear something that was off of maybe like I don't know, like say Empire Burlesque, which is now one of my favorite albums, but I'd hear that and it was such a shock because it contradicted what I wanted out of Dylan. All that bootleg stuff that's come out in the last like 15, 20 years would have been just incredible for me back then. It's still incredible now. But I slowly had to like figure out which things after that little golden era that ends around like 68, 67, or whatever still worked for me. And there's this really sort of bittersweet melancholic aspect of of that era and those songs and things on like John Wesley Harding and Desire. And Desire is kind of it's a sort of overwrought. I can't listen to like the song. I can't listen to like Joey or Hurricane. I mean, if they come on, whatever. But I like some of the other stuff. But one album that kind of made the grade for me back then. Now, pretty much all the albums have made the grade for me. But one album that made the grade for me back then was New Morning. And this had sort of melancholic uh, thing, but it also had like a reassuring quality. And what I realized, and this is in relation to the Céline quote, is that as I've gotten older now and it passed a significant amount of time and I'm dealing with more adult sort of problems, which are, when you're young, you feel like you have this sort of fortitude that you can kind of like face challenges, that you have this inherent ability to survive, and that when you get older, you kind of doubt that innate ability to survive, or that innate, I don't want to say durability. It's a, there's another word for it. There's courage, but there's also another word, but I'm missing it. Anyways, I found myself in the last few years, I got this collection, which is pretty much, there's this and there's another self-portrait, but this is just pretty much tracks from, he cut in 1970. Some of the stuff would have been, he's kind of rehashing some Nashville skyline. He's doing a lot of stuff for New Morning, and he's also doing some of the stuff that would be on Self-Portrait, which is an album I never really got into. And he's doing a lot of like other songs by other people, and he's kind of finding his way. And the point of this video is I was listening to it because I was just feeling, down, and I was like, when I listen to the Stones, I listen to the Byrds, I listen to those things that are kind of like, and Neil Young would fall into that. These are things that are kind of reassuring comfort music to listen to. And I thought, I'll put this on. And there's something about him going through certain songs a few times, like Sign on the Window or Went to See the Gypsy or things like that. They have like a very meditative quality that, what other songs does he have on here? Yeah, Sign on the Window, there's like multiple takes, it's in a row. He does some older stuff. Rainy Day Women, he does that. He's going through some of his older stuff. One More Weekend, Long Black Veil. But there's something about hearing him go through the songs he's working on and not pressuring himself. He's just sort of letting these songs, and a lot of people would be dismissive of these songs. My friend Greg is really dismissive of this stuff. So in a sense, this video is dedicated to Greg. It's also dedicated to Mark. Because I remember as I was going back to Mark, the reason I brought him up is when I was going through my phase of getting these Dylan CDs and then returning them at the record store I worked at. I remember one point, Mark was exasperated and he's like, "What is it with you and Dylan?" He was just so frustrated like that I had to have this idealistic Bob Dylan of 1966 constantly making this music that was appealing to my melancholic, erratic state of mind. Erratic yet durable, right? Persevering, maybe that's the word I was looking for. This idea that you could persevere through time, right? But now, when I'm older, and I listen to this, and I listen to Bob go through these songs over and over and over, it has this very reassuring quality. It's very calming. And I'm not doing Bob justice in this video. I'm just talking about this little period. But it's the meditative quality of Bob Dylan. And it's it's this level of domesticity and passivity that he sort of had at this time. Everyone was expecting him to really conquer the world again. He never would conquer the world in the same way. And intrinsically, he never cared about doing that again. And there's something about going and finding this moment and revisiting it that is very nourishing. And nourishing can sound trite, but it's one of those things that if you don't have that intrinsic sense of durability or perseverance, you can have a supplemental sort of thing that kind of comes in and sort of helps you with that. Like how I said with black metal, like you feel like screaming all the time, so black metal performatively screams for you. Well, this is kind of like on the same wavelength, but different, for those moments where you're not feeling so durable or invincible, or that you'll survive, right? So, Bob Dylan, New Morning, 1970, Nashville Skyline, those things, there's something about them. They're meant to be reiterated and replayed and gone through over and over, as he was doing. And it's pacifying. All right. So if you like the video, like, subscribe, listen to Happy Casualties.